Hello boys and girls, thank you for joining with me as we continue in Jotham's journey towards the first Christmas. And we're in Advent 3 and chapter 5. And this chapter is called Saints. Jotham was dreaming that he was on one of the great ships that travel at sea. He had seen such ships as his family camped along the Mediterranean Sea and now saw himself standing on the bow of one giving orders. But then there was a foul smell in the air and his nose tickled. He awoke with a start and discovered his face was buried deep in the fur of a camel's back. "Yuck!" he cried. "Good morning." Jotham looked around the head of the camel to see where the voice had come from. It was Ishtar's servant, down below, leading the camel. It was only then that he noticed Ishtar riding behind him between the camel's humps. "Good morning," Jotham called down to the servant. "How did I get up here?" "Well, late in the night you fell asleep as you were walking, so I lifted you and Ishtar to the camel's back." Suddenly Jotham remembered the excitement of the night before and their quick departure. He'd never heard of a caravan traveling at night, but no one seemed to mind the sudden exodus or the lost night of sleep. Now the morning sun shone on their backs and they were still moving, headed west towards Jerusalem. "What's going on here?" The voice sounded like the bawling of a newborn lamb. It was Ishtar, now sitting up straight behind Jotham. "Good morning, friend," Jotham said. "It is morning, and we still travel towards Jerusalem." Jotham saw out of one of the corners of his eye that Ishtar was looking upward. "The star is gone," he said. "I'll speak with my father." With that, Ishtar slid down off the camel and ran forward along the caravan, which wound slowly back and forth in the sun. Jotham decided he'd just as soon stay put and enjoy the ride for a while. A few minutes later, Ishtar returned. "My father said we followed the star all night," Ishtar reported as he walked alongside the camel. "They set their sights on it and follow its course still during the day." "Will we be stopping today?" Jotham asked. "Yes, but only for a few hours of rest. My father wants to continue on as long as the star appears each night." "Does he know where we're going?" "The star seems to take us in the direction of the great city of Jerusalem, but there's no way to know how far that direction we must go, or if the star will lead us in a different direction." Jotham nodded, pleased. "Jerusalem is exactly where I want to go," he thought. "It's where my family will be gathered for the census." The caravan continued moving for another hour. Then finally a halt was called and everyone lay down for a few hours' sleep. Only a few tents were put up for the women. All the men slept out in the open. Jotham and Ishtar weren't tired at all, though, because they slept on the camel all night. So they set about exploring the desert plateau on which they were all camped. There wasn't much to see on the plateau, mostly scrub brush and sand, but the boys found plenty to do. They chased scorpions and snakes, except for the ones they knew to be dangerous, and tried to catch the few small animals that they saw. But then just before the noon they saw a rare sight. A silver fox was prowling around the bushes, stalking a rabbit a few feet away. Carefully, Jotham and Ishtar worked their way through the brush, trying to sneak up on the fox. When they were 20 feet away, the fox heard them and took off running. Two boys went after it, leaping over scrub brush and rocks, laughing all the way. They scrambled up some boulders at the top of the hill, and Ishtar was about to jump down the other side when Jotham suddenly screamed and grabbed him by the collar. "Decca!" Jotham screamed, because there, camped among the rocks, was Decca of Megiddo, looking tired and dirty and beat up and very, very angry. Ishtar screamed then too, even though he didn't know why, but Jotham knew, and in that instant he saw that they had taken Decca by surprise as he ate his breakfast. Farther down the hill, Jotham saw two of Decca's men sleeping on a rock. They had awakened at the screams from the boys and were just getting to their feet. "Run!" Jotham yelled, and the two boys raced back down the hill. They ran back towards the caravan, but it was in a valley around several hills. Jotham's feet pounded into the ground, sometimes slipping on loose rocks or catching a bit of sagebrush. Jotham looked behind them and saw that Decca was indeed chasing them and seemed to be getting closer. The two boys rounded a hill and Jotham lost sight of Decca. In the next instant, Ishtar screamed. When Jotham looked back, Ishtar had disappeared. He skidded to a stop and looked frantically around. Finally, he heard a faint cry, and when he looked at where it had come from, he saw a hole in the ground between two clumps of sagebrush. The hole wasn't much bigger than Jotham, and he could understand how Ishtar had failed to see it. A moment later, Ishtar's head popped up out of the hole. "Yuck!" he yelled, looking at his dirty tunic in disgust. Jotham heard the pounding of Decca's footsteps coming from the other side of the hill, and in an instant he realized they could never beat Decca back to the caravan now, and they did the only thing there was to do. With a mighty leap, he jumped into the hole on top of Ishtar. The two boys slammed into the floor of the cave with a thud. Ishtar started to open his mouth in protest, but Jotham quickly clamped his hand over his friend's face. Both boys listened as Decca's running feet passed the cave and kept going. After a few moments, Jotham let go of Ishtar. "Ow!" yelled the Persian boy. "That hurt!" "Trust me," Jotham said, panting. "It would hurt a great deal more if Decca were to catch us." Jotham's eyes began to adjust to the light, and he could see that the cave was actually part of a tunnel that ran for a great distance both directions in the dark. He thought for a moment, then tore off a piece of his tunic and wrapped it around a stick. As he had seen Nathan do, he then found a flintstone and lit his makeshift torch. "What are you doing?" Ishtar asked. "We're going to follow the tunnel," Jotham answered. "We're what?" "We can't go back outside," Jotham said. "Decca and his men have probably already figured out we didn't make it back to the caravan, and so they're hiding out there somewhere. They'll be searching the area above us." Ishtar looked at the rock ceiling over their heads and shuddered. "Then let's move quickly. Which direction shall we go?" Jotham looked back and forth and turned to his left. "This way," he said. Slowly they climbed through the jagged edges of the tunnel, with Jotham in the lead. All of a sudden, the floor of the tunnel leveled out. Men have been here before, Jotham thought to himself. The floor is too flat and smooth to be just a cave. The boys edged their way forward, hearts pounding in their chests, thinking that maybe this wasn't just such a good idea. Jotham kept imagining scorpions hiding in the dark cracks of the rocks, snakes hanging from the ceilings. He was about to say they should turn back when Decca's voice came haunting them through the cave. "Little one," came the faint but evil voice. "Little one, come back to me. I'm going to catch you, little one. You may run, but I'm going to catch you, and then look out." Jotham's heart raced, and he pushed on through the darkness, not caring any more about snakes or scorpions. "Friend of the little one," came the voice again, "listen to me, I will not harm you. Bring your friend to me, and I will spare your life." Jotham's eyes grew wide, and he looked at Ishtar. Ishtar gave him a look that said, "Yeah, like I'd really do that." Jotham smiled, and then they ran on. They barely even noticed as they passed through an archway cut into the rock, but a moment later, they skidded to a stop and screamed once again. "It's over!" Ishtar cried. "Run!" Jotham shouted. But both boys just stood there, heaving great terrified breaths, transfixed by what they saw. Cut into the walls of the cave in front of them were small alcoves, and in each alcove was a dead body wrapped in the clothing. "We must leave this place," Ishtar cried, but neither of them could move. They inched their way forward, looking at the bodies in the torchlight. The alcoves were cut out of the rock and extended as far as the boys could see. Each was slightly bigger than the body it held, and each body was wrapped in fine linen cloth. "Who would do such a terrible thing?" Ishtar asked, his nose scrunched up in disgust at the smell. "What terrible thing?" Jotham panted, his own face twisted up though at the smell. "To put dead bodies in a cave without a sarcophagus." "What's a sarcophagus?" "Sarcophagus," Ishtar corrected. "It's a burial box of the dead." "I've never seen anyone buried in a box before. My people just wrap dead bodies in burial cloths and cover them with spices and lay them in a cave like this." Ishtar thought this was pretty silly, but he didn't say anything more. The boys realized that Decca could reach them any moment and started up the tunnel again. After a few minutes, the evil voice returned, a little louder this time. "Little one, look! The bodies of your ancestors. What a good place for you to die." Then there came a screeching evil laugh, and Jotham ran just a little faster. They seemed to run for what felt like hours. They were almost as afraid of the dead bodies as they were of Decca, as they slithered through the dark. Finally, the tunnel ended in a huge room with stone carvings. Jotham's torch was getting short now, and he tore another length from his tunic. The room seemed as big as a temple to the boys, and all around its walls were cut archways that led to other tunnels. The archways were decorated with carved images of ancient ancestors in long robes. There was one of Moses parting the sea, and another one showed a man being spit out by a great fish. In others, men and women were leading camels, fighting wars, or praising God. Then, in the dimming light, they came across a flat, white stone with writing on it, and Ishtar gasped. Jotham looked at him in amazement. "You can read this?" he said, surprised that any boy of 10 could read such things. "Yes," Ishtar said, barely able to whisper. "It says, 'Wait in peace, for this is the place where the Messiah shall come to the earth.'" At that moment, the voice of the devil cut through the dark only inches behind Jotham's ear. "I am here, little one," Decca hissed like a snake. And then Jotham screamed once more. "A day of the Lord is coming. On that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. East of Jerusalem, the Mount of Olives will be split in two." Many Jews were so anxious for the coming of the Messiah that they have themselves buried in the place where they believe he will make his appearance, on the Mount of Olives near Jerusalem. While we Christians believe that the Messiah has already arrived, it's true that the Bible tells of his second coming to that mountain. What we believe should make a difference in the way we live. Advent is the perfect time to take a deep look at our spiritual life. Does our faith make a difference in the way we think and act towards others? Do we love the Lord enough to let him take our self-centeredness away? The psalmist tells us, "Search me, O God, know my heart, test me, and know my anxious thoughts. See if there is any offensive way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting." Christmas will be that much merrier if we can say that verse with sincerity and allow God to shed his light on the dark tunnels of our souls.